It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Good to have you on the show. This is Live Release by Omobola Stephen. I'm your host, Omobola Stephen. On the show, we focus on personal development and self-improvement. Now, the whole essence of embracing personal development is for us to become a true version of ourselves. Now, it's a whole new meaning to life when we are intentional about improving on ourselves, not just personally, also, but spiritually. This is the mission and the focus of Live Release by Omobola Stephen. We love to steer the minds of our audience positively would like transforming our insight from expert and professionals who've been there and done that. Now, we offer disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations that is going to move you from where you are to where you need to be. Today, I'll be focusing on health and wellness, and I have Matt TACK and also Dr. Alfred Alessi, who they are experts in, they are human longevity experts, while Dr. Alfred Alessi is the doctor of functional medicine. They also are podcast hosts, just like I do. They have a podcast titled Growing Full Well Podcast. Welcome to the show with me, Matt Tag, and also Dr. Alfred Alessi, as we share this important topic about how we can live a life fulfilled.
Thank you for having us. We're looking forward to the conversation.
Really, it's an important conversation, but I'd like to begin the interview with this question. Really, body has the innate ability to heal itself when interference is removed. Now, what led you to this conclusion?
Yeah, I mean that's just the nature of how it is, right? If we go all the way back to before medicine was even a thing, the default settings that our body come with when we're born is that ability to grow, to reproduce cells, and to heal, right? If you cut your finger, the platelets are going to come, it's going to scab up, and it's going to ultimately heal. Maybe there's a scar, maybe there's not even a scar, but that's the same for every aspect of our body. So, what I've found in my career practicing functional medicine and chiropractic and all these natural interventions is that all we have to do is just get the body out of its own way, and it is going to do what it's meant to do, which is heal, grow, and adapt. But due to toxicities and so many things in the environment that are preventing that from happening, obviously sedentary lifestyle is a big one we see in our country, and just obviously the abundance of fake food, processed food, if you will, that is comprising our body. The body's not able to do its job. So that's what you just said with the body being able to heal itself. That's at the root of what we do.
Oh, really? Now, I'd like us to just move a bit to longevity because whether we like it or not, what we're taking also reflects on how our body reveals itself in the outward. Now, talking about longevity, now, I like Matt Tack to respond to this. What's the secret to longevity? Suffice it to say that how can a person live beyond their life expectations? Is it possible?
Yeah, I mean, longevity, I think you need to go back a step though and interpret the way you look at longevity. Peter Attia wrote a book on longevity and what it actually means, right? And so it's this idea of like your health span is greater than your lifespan. And so how you implementing like small practices where you're just cognizant, right? And it really comes down to nutrition. And so if you're cognizant of what you're putting into your mouth, like you're going to have optimal longevity, right? If your body's not carrying 25 pounds of excess weight, like that's a definition of longevity, right? Because your body's able to work within itself instead of against itself. And so when we think about longevity, a lot of people want to take that term and just, oh, you got to do all these different things and just make it really, really complicated. But the ideal longevity is just like, how am I improving my health span today? And so it begins, as we always talk about, of what you're putting in your mouth. And so we want to make sure we're getting as many whole foods as possible and we're having a high protein balanced diet. And that is a definition of longevity. You just want your body to work within itself instead of against itself. And so that's how we describe it. We just try to keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, absolutely. Now, keeping it simple. Now, I'm just thinking in my head, is there any way we can work on our organs for longevity? And now, perhaps, which organ do you think is the organ of longevity, and that we should begin to work on, if that's possible.
You know, this is a topic that everyone, thinks about, and you really have to come back to, like, is muscle an organ, right? And muscle is an organ. It's an organ that you need to expand and grow and nurture over time, and that's where protein comes into play. Is you want to keep lean, dense muscle supply, and that's really the key element of longevity, is really having lean muscle mass on your skeletal structure. Now, you do need to look at your heart, right? But if you have more dense muscle, typically your heart is going to operate at a higher level of efficiency, right? And so it all comes, down to, are you exposing things where you're growing that lean muscle mass? And so we talk about that. We have three things that we talk about to the guys that we coach. We start with mindset, right? It's got to be a mindset, but then it comes down to nutrition and muscle. And so we really focus muscle being the primary organ of longevity.
But really, you talk about muscle here, building muscle. Do you think it's just easy for women to build muscles? Dr. Alfred, do you want to share your insight?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the common misconception, is that women think if they work out and they lift weights and they eat high protein diet that they're going to bulk up like a guy. And I mean, it's a lot harder to get bulked up and build muscle than you think. It's not like it just happens overnight by accident. So we do believe that women, it's the same as men, right? We need to have lean skeletal muscle on our body. It just improves our immune system, improves our body's ability to fight disease, avoid injuries, deteriorate over time. It improves bone mass, right? So a very common thing in women as they get older is osteopenia and osteoporosis. That's something that can be prevented and reversed with resistance training and having adequate muscle on the frame. So I think it goes equally for men and women. I don't think it's a bias.
How can we effectively evaluate and improve on our health to reach our possible status, especially in this 21st century? You and I know that it's very difficult to attain an optimized state of health where everyone seems to be busy.
Yeah, I mean, step one is something we preach all the time. Step one is you have to know where you are today to know where you're trying to go. So we definitely recommend getting blood work or some kind of comprehensive lab testing, and more so than what you just are going to get from your general practitioner, right? You need to know more than just your blood cell count. So looking at things like hormones, thyroid is very important for metabolic health. Looking at like cardiac inflammation markers, obviously your cholesterol is one that's important too. But if you then have a baseline, then you know how you can improve your health over time by making certain, tweaks to either your lifestyle, your nutrition, your regimens. And then from there we go into obviously the nutrition and the exercise portion of that to optimize yourself, and really the six pillars that we have. So optimizing your mindset, your sleep, your spiritual, kind of how do you exist in this world other than just your physical, right? I don't know if you want to add.
But really, yes, Matt, you can go ahead. How can we really work on that using the six key pillars? Can you share, put that in proper perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And our six pillars, we'll just go around them really quickly, but fuel, movement, sleep, mind, spirit, and work, right? And when you have some evaluation, like a daily evaluation and a balance of those, it's tough to have true everything balanced, right? Sometimes work, takes away from, your fuel management and your movement, right? And so there's seasonalities to that, but it really comes back to what I prefaced before, was being cognizant of all those things, right? And what human optimization actually is. Like, okay, very busy season with work. How do I at least get some level of activity in while there's a busy season of work? And so it's this balance wheel effect of, like, I got to figure I'm learning something new, right? And it's constantly nurturing your mind. And so that's why we put mind in there, right? Is you're nurturing, you're growing in that way. And one of the big things in terms of that I like to talk on is a couple different factors, but like naturally with age, you have a thing called your VO2 max, which is your velocity of output, right? That you take in terms of oxygen. And so typically people don't like running as much. typically people don't like resistance training because they get their out of breath and it becomes really, really uncomfortable. Well, it's this idea of human optimization is consistently stepping into the uncomfortable. And the cool thing about resistance training or running or doing things, movement, is the fact that like you're stepping into like a little bit more of an uncomfortable state and you're not being static, and our bodies are meant to move, right? And so the more we move, the less that we have more insulin resistance. We don't have crazy glycemic spikes from, maybe dinner, right? So one of the things that, practical ways I'll give for your audience of like, after you eat dinner, are you going for a walk, right? Because so many people, specifically in America, they choose to sit down, turn on the TV, look at their phone. But once you get that movement in, right, you become less exposed to glycemic spikes, and you become more insulin resistance. And so that's why we believe in the power of getting really like building that muscle supply to become less resistance. And that's really truly coming back to the heart of it, of what human longevity and optimization looks like within our pillars, is really balancing that stuff, because it's such a fine line. And you got to continually step into the uncomfortable, right? If you want to grow and work, you got to step, you got to learn new things. If you want to be more healthy, you got to learn new things. And the more knowledge you have in, the more you'll be optimized.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing that perspective with my audience, Matt. Now, Dr. Alfred, I like to talk about mindset and health. I think it's also absolutely important because the focus of Live Well Lead is about the mind shift. We need to really move out of the comfort zone, as you said, from the familiar, to the unfamiliar, and also for us to begin to see the changes that we want to see in life, we also need to be ready to embrace changes. And sometimes they can be uncomfortable. And now, so what do you want my audience to learn or to know about mindset and also about health? And also, quickly, can our mindset affect the medical treatment's effectiveness?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. And this is something we coach. We have a clinic where we focus on functional health, medicine, chiropractic, all kind of natural healing modalities. And, the first conversation we have with any patient is, what are your goals? What do you want it to achieve from this? Do you want to be out of pain? Do you want to achieve better health? Then we have to coach them on that success mindset. And so if you have a mindset that's focused on growth, success, and that you are going to get better, our patients get amazing results. Now, if somebody has a negative mindset where they're doubting the process, they're unsure if it's going to work, they get less good results from that. And that's because the body heals top down. So ultimately, yes, the mind controls the way our body's going to heal. They've done studies on how people who are sick or whatever they're going through, and they're focused on that growth, and then a placebo, right? Say someone's given medicine and the other people are given a placebo, but they're like, yeah, this is the same. They get better too. And so that goes to show you that the mind is really in control. So if you can hack that, right? You can use different practices to really get dialed in on how you're focused on ultimately, having that positive mindset.
And now, quickly tell me the idea behind full fed.
Yeah, it actually came out of him. It's this idea, and we love the term, is that, think about this. Have you ever asked yourself, like, do I want my glass to be half full? Like, do I want to operate on a half full glass? And the point is, no, I want to feel fulfilled, and I want that glass overflowing, right? I want it in abundance. And everyone would say that. And so then it becomes how do you live a full fueled life? And that's where, those pillars really come into play as like that balance wheel effect, as I aforementioned. And so building onto that mindset, though, the mindset is such a critical piece. And we have to, I'll be vulnerable and say, like, we have to work on this on a daily basis. And so that's the beauty in our partnership, is that we have to lift each other up, and we have to say, hey, like, we're going to get through this, right? And we have some ebb and flows where we're like, man, really tough month of business this month, but I swear I know it's there, right? We're going to hit a tipping point. And so And you ever heard like saw those experiments in those in the kids classes where they talk to plants, right? And so you'll go over and you'll talk to a plant and you'll be like, I hate you and you're ugly, and the plant will die. And then the other plant that they nurture and that I love you, and they trim and they just nurture it every day and they talk loving words to it, somehow that plant grows, right? And it's this ecosystem of, number one, how we're talking to ourselves and how we're talking to other people that produce that level of energy. And so that's one thing we've been cognizant of, like in the seasonality of business that, has become a little bit unpredictable with our current election system and storms coming through. And we're like, we got to keep feeding it. We got to keep going. We know that there's a tipping point ahead. And so you got to feed that with that level of energy. And that's where that mindset and spirit comes into play, is that you go where your greatest thought is leading you. And so we want to make sure our thoughts are leading us in that way. So I hope that explains it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Alfred, and also Matt. Now, any important news or any projects you have in the pipeline you think my audience, they're going to benefit from it? Now you can share that, if there's any.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on a few things right now. We were actually just in a little bit of strategy session talking about like some new things that are on the horizon. But, mainly what we're working on right now is what happens in our clinic, and then some of the guys that we're actually coaching of how we want to promote that. But, one of our main motives is, just being just a value and a servant to the Tampa Bay area right now, and how we're providing that functional care that they need. There's so many issues that people go through life, and they have different pains. And the biggest project that we're working on right now is really converting our practice and really growing our practice, where we can just help more people at the end of the day. So that's one area, and then I'll let Dr. Alessi speak on some others.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, we use our podcast as a way to just get knowledge out for people as well. People who are like, how do I start this? Or how do I get back in shape? And maybe they're overwhelmed and they look at YouTube and there's a million things. It's like, where to go, right? People get that overwhelmed. So, our podcast is definitely a resource for that. We try to simplify and really make like tangible, like actionable ways for people to take steps forward in their health. And so we have some really cool episodes with some great content on there. Everything from sleep optimization, supplementation, nutrition, workouts, all of it. So sometimes a little nerdy, sometimes a little bit more simplified, but ultimately just really good educational. So, and that's the Full Fueled podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Sincerely, I wish you best of luck in this project and in subsequent ones that you embark upon. Can you share your social media handles and your website?
Yeah, definitely. So our podcast is Full Fueled, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, everywhere. My Instagram handle is fullfueled_doc.
And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm human.optimizer. And then my Facebook is just my name, Matthew Tack. And then we have the Full Field podcast, which is pretty much on every syndication source. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes are the main platforms we operate on. And then, if anyone listening is in the Tampa Bay area, we own Alessi Functional Health, and we can get you a pain-free future. So
great. Good to know. Thank you, Dr. Alfred Alessi and Matt TACK, for sharing your valuable contribution to the topic of discussion, talking about how we can live full well. And thank you for joining me on the show and sharing your expertise on this important topic for such time as this. I wish you best of luck once again in all these projects.
thank you so much. Appreciate you having us on.
Sure. It's been Omobola by Omobola Steven. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the show, you can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast community you bump into online and do have a great time listening to the show as expert and professionals share disruptive yet constructive mind-shift conversations on topics or subjects under personal development and self-improvement. Now, I need you to stay safe always. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you once again, Matt TACK and Dr. Alfred Alessi. Thank you for the show. Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.